I was stumbling along the highway shoulder with my toddler in my arms while semi-trucks roared past. My husband had taken my keys, claiming I was mentally unstable. But he didn't know my father was a former sheriff. When we went back to get my things, we uncovered a sickening truth. While I was crying in a locked room, my husband forged my signature and stole my son's entire inheritance to pay off his mother's debts. Stay tuned to the end to see how I turned my cage into his prison cell. My name is Eleanor Vance. I was 26 years old, trudging along the sun-scorched shoulder of Highway 34 with my 2-year-old, Leo, pressed against my chest. The wind from the passing semi-trucks threatened to knock us over, shaking the very air in my lungs. I was paralyzed by fear, but I didn't stop. Then, the shrill scream of brakes cut through the roar. My father's heavy black pickup swung onto the gravel, kicking up a cloud of dust. He leaped out, his face a mask of controlled fury as he scanned the empty road behind me. "Eleanor, where the hell is your car?" he barked over the rush of traffic. I looked him in the eye, the weight of the secret finally breaking. "Julian took the keys," I said. "He told me I'm medically unfit to get behind the wheel." The silence inside the cab was deafening, a heavy shroud after the chaos of the roadside. The air conditioning hit my skin like ice, drying the sweat but doing nothing for the hollow ache in my chest. Leo had fallen asleep the moment he hit the car seat, soothed by the hum of the engine. I watched his small, peaceful face, my hands finally beginning to tremble. The adrenaline was leaving me, replaced by a suffocating sense of shame. "How long?" my father asked. He didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on the horizon, his grip on the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were bleached white. In that moment, he wasn't just my dad, he was a veteran sheriff interrogating a witness. 6 months, I whispered. Ever since Leo turned 18 months. He sucked in a sharp, jagged breath. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it didn't look like a crime, Dad. That's the trick." It didn't start with a locked door or a raised hand. It started with a pot roast. It started with Beatrice showing up at the front door with dinner, saying, "You look pale, Eleanor. Let me take the night shift with the baby." I was drowning in exhaustion, so I let her. Then it was Julian, sliding the laptop toward him and saying, Honey, why stress over the mortgage? I'm a financial advisor. Let me handle the accounts so you can focus on Leo." And I was overwhelmed, so I thanked him. I stared out at the blurring pines, trying to make him see the geometry of the trap. "It's the boiling frog, Dad. You know the story. You drop a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put it in cool water and turn the heat up 1 degree at a time, it stays until it's too late. That was my life. The heat went up so slowly I didn't notice I was burning. First, Beatrice moved into the guest suite to help. Then, she was in my kitchen every morning, critiquing the sugar content of the oatmeal I made for my son. Soon, she was auditing my grocery receipts, circling every frivolous purchase in red ink. When I pushed back, Julian told me I was being ungrateful. He told me I had postpartum anxiety. My father's jaw set into a hard line. Did a professional sign off on that? Julian did. Every time I asked why our savings had moved to an account I couldn't see, he said I was being paranoid. Every time I asked why his mother had a key to our master bedroom, he said I was being difficult. They made me feel like my own mind was failing me. I looked down at my palms, raw from clutching the baby carrier. Last week, I tried to drive to the park and my keys were gone. Julian said he was keeping them for my own protection because I'd been so scattered. He said he was guarding me. They even checked my phone. Dad. Every night, Julian claimed he was making sure I wasn't doom-scrolling for the sake of my mental health. He was reading my messages. He was tracking my GPS. I stopped calling you because I didn't want you to worry, and I didn't want them to see I was reaching out. I thought if I just played the part, if I was quieter, more obedient, they'd eventually give me my life back. My father pulled the truck onto the shoulder and slammed it into park. He turned to me, and the look in his eyes wasn't disappointment. It was the cold, lethal focus of a man who had spent 30 years hunting predators. That isn't protection, Eleanor, he said, his voice low and terrifyingly steady. That is a siege. They isolated you. They disarmed you. And then they took you hostage. We're going back. Panic flared in my chest. No, Dad, please. I can't. We aren't going back to Torque, he said, shifting the truck back into gear. We're going back to get your things. You're leaving that house today, and you are never walking the side of a highway again. The tires crunched over the pristine white gravel of the driveway. My father's truck looked like a dark bruise against the backdrop of imported sedans and meticulously manicured boxwords. The estate sat in a deathly silence, a fortress of limestone and wrought iron. Dad killed the engine, but for a moment, neither of us moved. Through the windshield, I saw them. Julian and Beatrice were on the terrace. She was laughing, swirling a glass of Chardonnay, while Julian tapped away at his tablet. They looked like a spread from a luxury magazine. They looked like people who hadn't just watched a mother and child disappear down a highway on foot. Stay in the car, my father said. I ignored him. I unbuckled Leo, my fingers fumbling with the plastic clips, and pulled him against my chest. I wasn't staying behind. I followed my father up the stone walk, matching his heavy, purposeful stride. Beatrice saw us first. Her smile didn't drop, it just hardened into something brittle. Oh, look who's come home, she called out, her voice sharp as broken glass. And she brought reinforcements. Sheriff, you're just in time for a drink. My father climbed the steps, his boots thudding against the slate. He didn't look at the wine. He looked at Julian. Where are her keys? He asked. It was that low rumble he used in interrogation rooms, the kind that made men forget how to breathe. Julian stood up, smoothing the front of his designer polo. Let's not be dramatic, Vance. We were worried. She's been, or unstable. We took the keys for her own safety. You know how new mothers get. The practiced concern, the casual dismissal, it made my blood boil. I stepped out from behind my father's shadow. I'm not unstable, Julian. I'm leaving. Beatrice let out a short, mocking bark of a laugh. Leaving? Where would you go, Eleanor? You have no job, no car, and barely a thought in your head that isn't about diapers. We are protecting you. We are keeping this family intact because you are clearly incapable of doing it yourself. My father stepped between us. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. He just pinned Beatrice with a cold, flat stare. You aren't protecting her. You're holding her hostage. Give her the keys. No, Julian crossed his arms, trying to match my father's height and failing. Or what? You going to arrest me? It's my car. My house. I make the rules here. She wants to go. She can work. But she isn't taking my son. The air in the yard seemed to still. The birds went quiet. My father took a single step closer to Julian. You want to talk about rules? Fine. Let's talk about the law. You are withholding her personal property. You are restricting her movement. And if you try to stop her from leaving with that child, that is unlawful imprisonment. Beatrice scoffed, waving a hand. Oh, please. She's hysterical. She needs bed rest. She needs a passport, my father said, turning to me. Go inside. Get your documents. Get the baby's things. I'll handle them. I ran past Julian, dodging his reaching hand. I heard Beatrice shouting something about trespassing and calling the police, but my father's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Go ahead, Beatrice. Call them. I'd love to explain this situation to my former deputies. I raced up the stairs, my heart drumming against my ribs. The house felt alien now, cold and hollow. It wasn't a home, it was a crime scene. I threw open the closet, my hands moving with frantic speed. I didn't fold anything. I just shoved Leo's onesies and my jeans into a duffel bag, my breath coming in jagged hitches. My father appeared in the doorway, his back to me as he watched the hallway. He stood like a statue, a barrier between me and the people who had dismantled my life. I stopped for a second, clutching Leo's favorite blanket. Dad? I whispered. He didn't turn around. His shoulders were rigid. I saw it 6 months ago, he said, his voice rough with a pain I hadn't expected. That Sunday dinner when you didn't laugh once. The way you looked at Julian before you'd even answer a simple question. I saw the light going out in your eyes, Eleanor. I froze. He had known. I told myself it wasn't my place, he continued, his voice cracking slightly. I thought marriage was hard, that I shouldn't interfere. I thought I was giving you space, respecting your boundaries. But I wasn't. I was leaving you behind enemy lines without a weapon. I'm so sorry. The guilt in his voice was a heavy, physical thing, the silent regret of a watchman who had fallen asleep while the gates were breached. I walked over and placed a hand on his arm. You're here now, I said. But Dad, you need to know something. I didn't stay because I was weak. He turned to look at me, his eyes searching mine. I stayed because I was terrified that if I left without a plan, they would take Leo. I reached under the mattress and pulled out a hidden folder, the one place Beatrice never checked because she was too busy inspecting the dust on the baseboards. I opened it. Inside were photos of Julian's bank statements I'd snapped when he left his laptop open, and screenshots of texts between him and his mother discussing how to manage me. I wasn't just surviving, Dad, I said, my voice finally steady. I was gathering ammunition. It's the invisible chain of the survivor. You don't yank against it, because it only chokes you harder. You wait. You pick the lock while they're sleeping. I was waiting for the moment I could leave with Leo and never look back. Today was that moment. My father looked at the folder, then back at me. The look of pity was gone, replaced by a grim respect. He didn't see a victim anymore, he saw his daughter. Let's go, he said. We walked out of the bedroom and onto the landing. Julian stood at the bottom of the grand staircase, looking up at us with a volatile mix of fury and disbelief. Beatrice was right behind him, her phone already clutched in her hand like a weapon. You can't take him, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Leo in my arms. That's kidnapping. I have the police on the line right now, Eleanor. My father didn't even break his stride. He descended the stairs step by heavy step, his presence so overbearing that Julian was forced to back away. "It isn't kidnapping for a mother to travel with her own child, Beatrice," my father said, his voice carrying the iron authority of a man who had the penal code memorized. "But preventing a person from leaving a premises? That's unlawful restraint. And if you lie to a 911 dispatcher about a custody dispute to incite a tactical response, that's filing a false report. Do you want me to outline the sentencing guidelines for you, or shall we just keep walking?" Beatrice's mouth snapped shut. Her thumb hovered over the screen, frozen. I walked past them both without a word. I didn't look at Julian. I didn't look at the designer kitchen where I'd spent a year crying over burnt toast and shattered nerves. I walked out the front door and into the blinding afternoon sun. The air out here tasted different. It tasted like oxygen. The drive to my father's house felt like the first real breath I'd taken in a year. The silence in the truck wasn't the heavy, suffocating kind I was used to. It was safe. Leo babbled in the back seat, pointing at the parsing Colorado pines, blissfully unaware that his mother had just burned her life to the ground to save him. When we finally pulled into my father's gravel driveway, I expected a wave of relief. Instead, my brain shifted into high gear. The adrenaline crash was brutal, leaving me shaky and nauseous. "We need to check everything," I said, dumping the duffel bag onto my father's kitchen table. He was already on the phone with his lawyer, but he gave me a sharp nod. "Check what, Eleanor?" "The money. The documents. Every single paper I grabbed from his office." I spread the contents of the folder across the table. I'd managed to snatch a thick envelope from Julian's home office while my father was holding the line in the hallway. My hands trembled as I sifted through bank statements, loan agreements, and title documents. It took less than 10 minutes to realize the true depth of the betrayal. My father hung up the phone and walked over. "What did you find?" I stared at the paper in my hand, the numbers blurring before my eyes. "My car," I whispered. "The SUV you bought me when Leo was born. It's gone." Julian had sold it 3 weeks ago to a dealership 2 counties over. The bill of sale was right there, dated the very day after he'd taken my keys. $12,000. My father's face went stoic, a mask of controlled, professional rage. "He sold a gift given to his wife," he muttered. "He didn't just sell it, Dad. Look at this." I pushed a bank transfer receipt toward him. "He used the cash to pay off a credit card, but the account isn't in his name. It's Beatrice's." My father picked up the slip. "Her gambling debts or some failed boutique venture. Does it even matter? They stole your vehicle to float her lifestyle." But that wasn't the end of it. I dug deeper into the file, my heart thudding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. There was a loan document from a private lender for $40,000. The borrower listed was a Leonard Vance. "I never signed this," I said, my voice rising. "Dad, look at the signature." "It looks like Julian trying to mimic your handwriting," he finished for me. The room began to spin. He had taken out a $40,000 loan in my name. I pulled up my banking app, my fingers slipping on the glass. Incorrect password. I tried again. Locked out. I called the automated line, punching in my social security number with a shaking hand. "The balance of your account ending in 4492 is $0. I dropped the phone. They had taken everything. The car, the educational trust my grandmother had left me, my credit. It wasn't just about control anymore. It was a calculated attempt to bankrupt me, to ensure I had no choice but to stay in the cage. My father studied the forged loan, the car sale, and the fraudulent transfers. His expression hardened into something lethal. "This isn't a domestic dispute," he said. "This is felony fraud." An hour later, when Julian and Beatrice pulled into the driveway, shouting about custody and making threats, I didn't hide. I opened the front door calmly and handed Julian a manila envelope. Inside was the proof, the loan documents, the bank records, and the clear evidence of the forged signature. His confidence evaporated the moment he saw the top page. "You stole $56,000 from your wife and son," I said, my voice cold and unwavering. "That isn't a marriage, Julian. It's a crime." I gave them a single choice. Return the funds by morning, or the entire file would be sitting on the district attorney's desk by noon. They left in a panicked scramble, exposed and suddenly powerless. 3 months later, I turned the key in the lock of my own apartment. It was small and quiet, but every square inch was chosen by me. My bank balance was modest, but it was mine. Julian was facing a string of charges, and his mother's assets were being frozen. I sat on the floor with Leo, watching the sunset over the mountains. I realized then that I wasn't grateful for the cage anymore. I was just grateful I'd had the strength to pick the lock.